In this episode, we find ourselves in Quincy, Illinois, where we learn more about the saints who have fled Missouri and the community that welcomes them with open arms. The kindness of Quincy is a unique episode in the history of the Latter-day Saints.
Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints represent a faith practiced by millions, a faith which has also inspired its share of controversy.
I think if you look at Brigham Young's whole life, well, it's a conundrum.
I'm Camrey Bagley-Fox, and together with John Wilson and Professor Daniel Peterson, we work to uncover unexpected twists in the character of a man that we thought we already knew.
Many of the saints were forced to cross the Mississippi with only their faith, their friends, and what little belongings they had left. One of those was Emma Smith. Camrey shared Emma's story with me.
Yeah, so while Joseph was in prison, Emma had to make this exodus with her children. She had 4 kids that she crossed with. There was Julia and Joseph III, who were 8 years old and 6 years old, and then Frederick and Alexander, who were 2 years old and 7 months old. Oh. And Emma had basically nothing. Everything had either been stolen from them or had been left in far west, and her friends drove her to the banks of the Mississippi, where one of the horses died. Like, everything was just
I remember.
so
and
wrong.
The river is frozen as well, right? So the ferries aren't going across. Yeah. And she's also carrying the transcripts of Joseph's translation of the Bible, too.
Mm-hmm. So Joseph's secretary had given those translations to Anne Scott, who was sort of someone who they thought people wouldn't suspect of having them. So Anne made these 2 satchels that she would wear under her skirts to keep the transcripts safe. Wow. She gave those to Emma, who wore them to cross the river. So she's crossing with like so much precious cargo across that river.
Children, sacred manuscripts. She walked across the frozen river, carrying the youngers.
The 2 little ones.
The older ones clinging to her dress.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can imagine the sounds of cracking ice as she's crossing, the terror of, it's a long way to go, right? Like any moment I could be drowning.
With my 4 children.
With my 4 children.
And her husband's in Liberty Jail in the most miserable time of his life. Like, it's mind-boggling to process what they were going through. And Emma actually wrote a letter to Joseph that kind of paints how desperate she was feeling during that time.
Was it not for the direct interposition of divine mercy, I am very sure I never should have been able to have endured the scenes of suffering that I have passed through. But I still live and am yet willing to suffer more if it is the will of kind heaven that I should for your sake. No one but God knows the reflections of my mind and the feelings of my heart when I left our house and home and almost all of everything that we possessed, excepting our little children, and took my journey out of the state of Missouri, leaving you shut up in that lonesome prison.
A couple things stand out to me in that letter. First of all is how desperate she must have been feeling to put that on Joseph, to even share that she was struggling, because she already knows he's dealing with so much.
Right.
And
you
also,
could just have easily been like, he's got enough on his plate.
Yeah, I'll carry this. But to feel the need to confide that in him. The other thing that stands out is her faith, you know, that through that all, she says that kind heaven,
and I will yet suffer more for your sake if that's what's required.
Yeah. And that she had already lost so many children that I'm sure as she's crossing, the fear of losing those that she still had to be weighing on her as well. And the only thing that would drive her to cross is knowing that hopefully this would be safer than where they were coming from.
So did it though? Did she have a happy ending in the cross?
Yes, they cross over the river and she's taken in by Judge John and Sarah Cleveland, and they live with the Clevelands until April, when Joseph finally escapes from Liberty.
What a moment of reprieve,
of like
such a storm.
A breath of relief, yeah.
I can imagine myself just weeping for gratitude. You're like,
yes.
Oh my gosh, someone somewhere is
being merciful enough to take in these strangers.
To me, one of the many remarkable things is that the citizens of Quincy don't just accept the Latter-day Saints into their homes, which is, it's not a huge town, and there are potentially several thousand Latter-day Saints coming.
Yeah,
that's not a small thing. But they also recruit an army of people to help them out. and they pass a resolution indicating what they intend to do, how they intend to treat the Latter-day Saints. And
really? Like a formal legal process
yeah.
happened and they were like, okay, by committee, here we go, this is what?
And I have a copy of it here, and if you'd be willing to look at it, I think it's a very noble document.
Okay. Okay, so this comes from the history of the churches where we have this recorded. So in the history of the church, it explains that the people of Quincy determined that the people called the Latter-day Saints were many of them in a situation requiring aid of the citizens of Quincy, and recommending that measures be adopted for the relief, which resolution was adopted. We get into the resolutions here, so it looks like there's 4. So the first, resolved that the strangers recently arrived here from the state of Missouri, known by the name of the Latter-day Saints, are entitled to our sympathy and kindest regard, and that we recommend to the citizens of Quincy to extend all the kindness in their power to bestow on the persons who are in affliction. Second, resolved that a numerous committee be raised to appeal directly and promptly to the citizens of Quincy to furnish them with the means to relieve all such cases. Third, to use their utmost endeavors to obtain employment for all these people. And finally, to be particularly careful not to indulge in any conversation or expressions calculated to wound their feelings. That's adorable.
Yeah, it is.
And how shocking, because here's the thing, it's like we now have, and the saints would have had the experience now that everybody's reacting to us adversely, right? From New York onward, it doesn't matter where we go or how familiar they are with us. The reaction is negative, the reaction is negative, the reaction is negative. And here they have every reason probably to expect that the reaction will be identical, right? We've heard rumors of you Mormons, right? But even this, they call them the Latter-day Saints, not the Mormons. They were just like they were President Nelsoning before it was cool.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
No, it's a remarkable thing, and it's such a contrast with Missouri.
Oh my gosh.
Right. One thing that I think is worth pointing out is that later on, in 1846, when the Saints are being driven from Illinois, there are documents here in this museum showing that the people of Quincy tried to get together aid for the Latter-day Saints who were escaping and living camped out on the other side of the Mississippi.
No, they rallied again.
You know, I've heard it said before that the Saints came to Illinois. They were at first received as refugees, but then they wore out their welcome. Well, not in Quincy, they didn't. People in Quincy were willing to help.
Well, and you were telling me over lunch that President Hinckley honored the people of Quincy.
He did. When the Nauvoo Temple was being dedicated, the Tabernacle Choir came out to participate in the ceremonies connected with the temple. It was arranged to have a concert here in Quincy by the Tabernacle Choir, and all the proceeds from the concert went to benefit the local community in Quincy. It was expressly a gesture of gratitude on the part of President Hinckley and the church for what had been done many, many decades before by Quincy.
Wow. What a shining diamond in an otherwise fairly black time.
Yeah.
Those are the balancing stories that we need to always keep in mind as we tell our church history. Yes, there were persecutions, but there were also acts of goodness and grace. And if we forget those, we're guilty of ingratitude, but we're also guilty of an unbalanced view of history.
Right. No, that's the thing. I think that in history you learn that your own ancestors maybe were not quite so shining bright and pure as you thought, but also the enemies maybe weren't quite so obviously wrong and evil as you may have thought. There's no justification for some of the things that happened. But
I struggle with Lilburn Boggs, but we'll figure that out on the other side. When Brigham and the others arrived back in Quincy on May 2nd, the next day they find out that Joseph is back. And Brigham described that moment. He said that it was one of the happiest moments of his life to again strike hands with the prophet of God. He said that Joseph looked like a father who had been through all sorts of difficult circumstances and was now free, rejoicing with his children again. What a beautiful way of Brigham remembering Joseph and honoring him, that he thought of Joseph not as a friend who was a couple years younger or whatever. He really thought of Joseph as like a father.
Which is amazing, because Brigham Young is older, and he's obviously very competent. He's very sure of himself and things that he does, a natural leader, but he recognizes in Joseph his father figure.
The statement that comes to mind is what Brigham said about Joseph, that I feel like shouting hallelujah all the time that I think that I ever knew Joseph Smith, the prophet. And I've obviously never met Brigham Young, but through many years of research in his letters and diaries and papers and learning about him in different venues, I feel like I've come to know Brigham. As with every historical character, there's moments where I wish they would have said something a little different or not done something one way or whatnot, but I feel like I've come to know Brigham Young in a really personal way, and he's blessed my life. He's blessed me as a prophet. I have a prophet today because Brigham Young was loyal to Joseph Smith and kept the keys and the doctrine alive. One of the things that I truly believe about Brigham Young is if you love the temple and you love eternal families, you need to love Brigham Young, because none of the other break-off groups kept temples and eternal families and that doctrine alive. But Brigham Young kept that doctrine alive, and I owe that to him.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking time to visit with us and to instruct us, and we hope people who will listen in.
Yeah.
Our visit to Quincy had been both enlightening and rewarding. It was a good reminder that in a world of disarray and difficulty, there are good people out there everywhere. And the Saints had been blessed by some of the best in Quincy. Here's what you can expect from our next episode.
I'm guessing
Join
this
us.
is Brigham speaking. What's going on?
Yes. So this is in regards to Zion's camp. This is from Brigham, and he's recounting the aftermath. He says, July 4th, my brother Joseph and myself, in company with several of the brethren, started for home. And we walked all the way. But this is the part I wanted you to hear. After they returned, Dennis Lake, who had been on Zion's camp, instituted a lawsuit against Brother Joseph Smith, charging him $30 a month for going up in Zion's camp to Missouri, alleging that Joseph had promised him a lot of land. But imagine this. You take this 2,000-mile journey, and when you get back, one of them sues you. Yeah. It's wild. Yeah.